Dear beloved, I receive a testimony that doesn't just tell a story. It pulls back the curtain on what faith really means. Today, I want to share with you the experience of Gabriella James, a young woman who had everything that looked like a perfect Christian life. She was the youngest deacon in her church, always serving, always present, always admired. But one evening, in the middle of a migraine and a blackout, Gabriella was given a vision of the rapture. A vision that shook her to the core. What she saw in those churches, and the words she heard from above, will challenge every one of us to examine whether we truly know God, or if we've just been performing faith. I am going to share the testimony, as it was sent to us. No part has been removed or added. So I encourage you to listen to the very end, in order to understand her testimony. And as you do so, may God bless you. Before we continue, please let me know where you're listening from. It would be nice to feel closer, even if we're physically apart. Also, don't forget to like. It will help this video to reach so many people who need to listen to this testimony, and leave a comment. Share your thoughts about this near-death experience testimony. Let's have a fair and open discussion so we can learn from each other here on this channel, and don't forget to subscribe for more of this content coming your way. Enjoy listening. My name is Gabriella James, and I'm 29 years old. I guess I should start by saying that I've always been what people call a church girl. You know, the type front row every Sunday, volunteer for everything, know all the hymns by heart. But what happened to me last year? Well, it changed everything I thought I knew about faith. I grew up in a family where church wasn't just something you did on Sundays. It was who we were. My grandmother used to say that our family tree was rooted in the church pews, and honestly, she wasn't wrong. I could recite Bible verses before I could properly tie my shoes. By the time I was in high school, I was leading youth group and organizing mission trips. Everyone said I had a calling. After college, I threw myself into church life even more. I became a deacon at 25, youngest in our church's history. I organized potlucks, ran the children's ministry, and never missed a service. If the doors were open, I was there. People looked up to me. They'd come to me with their problems, their doubts, their spiritual questions. I felt important, needed, like I was really making a difference for God. But here's the thing nobody talks about. Sometimes the busier you get doing God's work, the further you drift from actually knowing God. I was so caught up in the doing that I forgot about the being. I was performing my faith instead of living it. The wake-up call came in the most unexpected way. I was driving home from another committee meeting. We were planning the annual church carnival when I got this massive migraine. I pulled over, and the next thing I knew, everything went black. What happened next? I still don't know if it was a vision, a dream, or something else entirely. All I know is that it felt more real than anything I'd ever experienced. I found myself floating above my own body, watching myself slumped over the steering wheel of my car. But I wasn't scared. There was this incredible sense of peace, like being wrapped in the warmest blanket you can imagine. Then I started rising higher, above the trees, above the buildings, until I could see the whole city spread out below me. That's when I saw them, the churches. Every single one was lit up like it was Sunday morning, even though it was Wednesday night. But something was terribly wrong. Through the walls, and somehow I could see right through them, I watched chaos unfolding. At my own church, Pastor Williams was standing at the pulpit, his face twisted with confusion and terror. The deacons were running around, shouting, trying to maintain order. The congregation was in complete panic. People were screaming, crying, searching frantically through empty pews. Because that's what I noticed, so many of the pews were empty. Not because people hadn't come to church, but because they had simply vanished. Here and there, scattered throughout the sanctuary, maybe 5 or 6 people out of 200 were just gone. Their clothes lay crumpled in their seats. their Bibles still open to whatever page they'd been reading. I watched Mrs. Henderson, who'd taught Sunday school for 30 years, frantically shaking the empty dress that her friend Martha had been wearing just moments before. I saw Tommy Rodriguez, our youth pastor, staring at the space where Maria Austin had been sitting. Maria, the quiet girl who never said much but always had this light in her eyes when she prayed. The scene played out the same way in church after church across the city. Pastors who'd built megachurches with thousands of members watched as maybe a dozen disappeared from their packed sanctuaries. Deacons who'd served faithfully for decades found themselves left behind, while the janitor who cleaned the bathrooms was among the few who vanished. I wanted to scream, to warn them, to explain what was happening, but I couldn't. I was just an observer, floating higher and higher above it all. And that's when I heard the voice. It wasn't loud, but it filled everything: the sky, the air, my very being. It sounded like water rushing over stones, gentle but powerful, ancient but immediate. I seek hearts, not crowds. Many labored in my name but never knew me. The words hit me like a physical blow, because in that moment, I realized I was seeing myself in those chaotic churches below. I was Pastor Williams at the pulpit, shocked and confused. I was Mrs. Henderson, shaking empty clothes and wondering how this could happen to such faithful people. I had been so busy building my reputation as a godly woman, so focused on being seen as righteous and dedicated, that I'd forgotten to actually connect with the God I claimed to serve. I knew scripture like the back of my hand, but when was the last time I'd sat quietly and just listened for his voice? I could organize events and lead committees, but when had I last experienced that simple, childlike wonder at God's love? The vision, or whatever it was, continued. I saw those who had been taken, and the thing that struck me wasn't their perfection. They weren't the most vocal Christians or the ones with the most Bible knowledge. They were the ones who loved quietly, who served without recognition, who spoke to God like he was their closest friend rather than a distant authority figure. There was old Pete, who swept the church parking lot every Saturday morning and never wanted credit for it. There was young Maria, who worked 2 jobs but still found time to sit with lonely elderly members after service. There was David, the recovering addict who'd only been saved for 6 months but talked to Jesus like they'd been best friends forever. What they all had in common wasn't perfect theology or impressive service records. It was relationship. Real, honest, messy, beautiful relationship with God. As I watched this scene unfold, I felt something breaking inside me. All those years of striving, of performing, of trying to earn God's love through good works and perfect attendance. It had been missing the point entirely. I'd been playing church instead of being the church. The voice spoke again, softer this time, filled with infinite sadness. Gabriella, my child, I have been calling your name, but you have been too busy answering to everyone else. Then everything went white. I woke up in my car with paramedics knocking on my window. Apparently, I'd been unconscious for 20 minutes. They wanted to take me to the hospital, but I insisted I was fine. How could I explain that I just experienced the most important 20 minutes of my life? Driving home, I couldn't shake what I'd seen. Was it real? Was it just my subconscious telling me what I already knew deep down? Does it matter? The message was clear either way. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I sat on my bedroom floor, no Bible, no devotional book, no agenda. I just talked to God like he was sitting right there with me. I told him about my fears, my doubts, my loneliness despite being surrounded by church people all the time. I confessed that I'd been so busy trying to impress him that I'd forgotten to love him. And for the first time in forever, I felt him there. Not in some dramatic, supernatural way, but in that quiet, steady presence that says, I've been here all along, waiting for you to stop talking and start listening. The changes in my life didn't happen overnight. I didn't quit church or become some kind of rebel, but I did start saying no to some commitments. I stepped down from a couple of leadership positions. I started showing up to church not because I had to be there, but because I wanted to worship. I began reading the Bible differently, not to find clever points for my next lesson, but to hear what God was saying to me personally. I started praying throughout the day, little conversations instead of formal speeches. I looked for God in quiet moments instead of just during the big, emotional church services. The funny thing is, some people at church didn't like these changes. When I stepped back from some of my responsibilities, a few members made comments about me losing my commitment or going through a phase. But others, the ones who'd been quietly seeking that same authentic relationship, they understood. Pastor Williams even pulled me aside one day and said he'd noticed something different about me. "You seem more peaceful," he said. "Like you've found something you were looking for." I have found something. I found the difference between knowing about God and actually knowing God, between serving in His name and serving from His heart, between being religious and being relationship. Now, a year later, I still go to church. I still serve and volunteer, but my motivation is completely different. I'm not trying to earn gold stars or build my reputation as a good Christian. I'm simply responding to love with love. And you know what? It's transformed everything. My prayers feel like conversations instead of performances. Reading the Bible feels like getting a letter from someone who loves me instead of studying for a test. Even my service comes from a place of joy instead of obligation. I still don't know if that vision was literally real or just my heart's way of showing me what I needed to see. But I'm grateful for it either way. It woke me up from sleepwalking through my faith. It reminded me that God isn't impressed by our busy schedules or our perfect church attendance. He's looking for hearts that are genuinely seeking Him. The empty churches in my vision weren't empty because people weren't religious enough. They were empty because people had focused so much on the rituals of faith that they'd missed the relationship that faith is supposed to be about. Listen, if you're reading this and you feel like you've been going through the motions, whether in your faith, your relationships, your work, whatever, it's not too late to wake up. It's not too late to stop performing and start being authentic. It's not too late to put down the mask and show up as yourself. God sees your heart anyway. The people who truly love you want to know the real you, not some perfect version you think they expect. And you deserve to live authentically, to pursue genuine relationship instead of empty performance. Take it from someone who spent years trying to earn love she already had. The most beautiful life is the one where you stop trying to be impressive and start trying to be real. That's where peace lives. That's where joy grows. And that's where you'll find the kind of connection with God and with others that makes everything else worth it. Don't wait for a vision or a wake-up call. Start today. Put down the performance, pick up authenticity, and see what beautiful things grow from that honest ground. Trust me, it's worth it. Gabriella's story is a reminder that God isn't impressed by our busyness, our titles, or our reputation in church. He looks for hearts that are His, hearts that love Him beyond the rituals and the routines. So let me ask you, are you building a resume of religious activity or a relationship with the living God? The truth is, when that day comes, only one of those will matter. If this testimony stirred something inside you, share it with a friend who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful encounters that wake you up to what really matters: knowing Him. Thank you for watching. Until next one, remain blessed.